Today, October 15th, 1969, I believe we Americans have reached the watershed mark on our journey towards disengagement with Vietnam and peace. Our cause is not a new one. Last year we asked for peace. 2 years ago we asked for peace. 3 years ago we asked for peace. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there were Americans who believed we didn't have to carry a big stick and police the world. But 5 years ago, we were a minority. Now, today, on October 15th, it is evident that we are a majority. We have disregarded the call for a military victory. We have condemned the Curtis LeMays who have shouted, "We're going to bomb them back into the Stone Age." And we are beginning to discredit those who tantalize us with the words, "honorable settlement." We know now that they are empty words, because we have learned painfully that there can be no honorable settlement in an immoral war. Today, across the nation, on this Vietnam War moratorium, hundreds of thousands of Americans have expressed their sentiments graphically. Police estimate 30,000 persons turned out in New Haven, Connecticut for a rally, and 7,000 in the shadow of the Connecticut State Capitol at Hartford. Other reports say 15,000 persons gathered on the Rutgers University campus at New Brunswick, New Jersey, 12,000 in Detroit, 10,000 in Chicago, 10,000 in Baltimore, 7,000 in Pittsburgh, and the list goes on and on. As Arthur Carson of the American Federation of Teachers said today to all of us who were gathered outside the Federal Building, we have about 60% of the Americans on our side. Now all we have to do is swing the other 40%. But it will not be easy to convince those 40% because they are the ones who have the power in America. And as Arthur Carson was speaking, I could not help but see the Federal Building, cold, sterile, a windowless, monolithic slab of cement rising horribly above the people below. And I could not help associating the image with the Nixon administration and the President's unequivocal dictate that his policy on Vietnam would not be changed by the vast anti-war demonstrations. Perhaps more dangerous is the administration's attempt to align itself with the moratorium, stressing the ultimate goal of the President and the demonstrators to be peace in Vietnam. But our efforts are not philosophical. It took 5 years, but I think now that all Americans will say they want peace in Vietnam, that we shouldn't have gone there. The question is, when do we get out? And this day, October 15th, is dedicated to saying, now. Monday and Tuesday of this week, over 9,000 UCLA students in a campus referendum answered this question: do you believe we should end the American involvement in the Vietnam War now by immediate and total troop withdrawals? 60%, 67% said yes, we want out now. Nixon has expressed his desire to get out of the war quickly. Last Sunday he said he was, quote, confident that the Vietnam War will be over in 3 years. Last year, 14,000 Americans were killed. Every time you take one breath, we have spent enough money to pay one teacher for 1 full year. Again, let it be clear what we are saying on this day: out now.
It's a pleasure that I have now to introduce to you a gentleman who is a citizen of Los Angeles, and in 1968, I think distinguished himself as giving a great deal of his time to chairman the McCarthy campaign, the McCarthy presidential campaign here in California. There were many people that worked during that campaign and worked for a single issue, and that was to end a war. We are here again tonight to end that very war, just by our numbers and by being here to protest. I'd like to introduce to you the gentleman that worked very hard in that campaign, and in a sense, I think the message of the campaign was to change things. It's a full-time participation. The gentleman is now chairman of the Urban Coalition here in Los Angeles, and I'd like you to greet him, please. Martin Stone.
When I was asked to come and speak here tonight, being a businessman and recognizing the tendencies of the present administration, I thought that it might be a desirable thing to put my argument in economic terms, terms which I think this administration finds more important than the other considerations that are involved in this war. I got incensed at the KNXT editorial the other day describing the organizers of the Moratorium as anarchists and revolutionists. I kept thinking to myself about the Wall Street Journal article advocating an immediate end to the war, about the article that appeared this morning in the lead magazine of the United States Chamber of Commerce urging an immediate withdrawal from Vietnam. These are all anarchists and revolutionists along with us. I thought also that I might argue that the balance of payments of the United States is in such a desperate deficit condition that we face a devaluation of the dollar relatively soon, based primarily on the drain from the Vietnam War. I thought also of the fact that the problems of inflation that we all hear discussed so often stem primarily from the excesses of the Vietnam War. But try as I might, as I came over tonight, walked over with my son and my daughter and my family, I couldn't think of this war in economic terms. I think that being a businessman, being an economist, whatever, it's still impossible to think of this war in economic terms. This war, in my estimation, is the greatest tragedy that's ever happened to this country during my lifetime. And to see a nation that has renounced its most sensitive young people in favor of hardened cynics like Lyndon Johnson, Richard Daley, the others, Strom Thurmond, William Westmoreland. These are the heroes of so many Americans today who are willing to throw out our younger generation for these old has-beens. I've never been so strongly convinced in my life that the time is here for the United States to change direction, to begin for the first time in an awfully long time to practice the kinds of things that we adults have been trying to teach our children for years. The problem that we have is that we keep mouthing these words and these phrases. We talk of honesty, we talk of integrity, we talk of love and honor, and what we get is, in the highest office in the United States, is dishonesty, a lack of integrity. We get brutality. And what we've become as a nation is something that's changed so drastically as a result of this war that we've got to put an end to it. Now, I suppose when we begin to think of all the evils that this war has occasioned us, The worst thing that we can talk about, I believe, is the alienation of our young people, because it's becoming evident that the young people are increasingly becoming skeptical about our dedication to the principles of the United States Constitution, to the principles of the Bill of Rights, to the hypocrisy. We're sick and tired, I think, of the kind of hypocrisy that has characterized our actions over the last 4 or 5 years. Richard Nixon spoke today or yesterday about the fact that the war would be over in 3 years. If we think back 5 years to the mandate that we gave Lyndon Johnson in 1968 by an overwhelming majority of Americans, if we think back to what has happened to this country, to the ideals it has espoused and professes to believe in, it begins to make us fear what 3 more years can do to this country. When we speak of believing in the United States of America, I hadn't realized that we were speaking of adherence and belief to a series of national geographic boundaries. I always thought that we were speaking of a set of concepts and beliefs on which this country was founded. We're rapidly losing those, and unless we can put an end to this disastrous war very soon, we'll have gone a long way towards moving about as far away from those principles as any nation can move. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Burt Lancaster.
Thank you very much. I have a few brief moments to address you because we have a very long program. So I want to get right to the point. I want to tell you that I am proud to be here. I want to tell you that I, along with you, protest this war in Vietnam, that I want to see it stopped immediately. I feel that this war is a shameful expression of the United States and its so-called democratic ideals. We have always prided ourselves as being a country that extends the arm of democracy to people all over the world. Yet we are engaged in what is to me a shameful war, a futile war. We are telling people there that they do not have the right of their own self-determination, that we are going to set it up on our terms. It is a war that has brought great tragedy to all the people of America. I think even those who seem to be approving the war, deep down inside, feel very badly about this and would like to find some kind of way out. The only way out is to do something about it now, to come forward and to say, stop it. I don't know what else I can say at this moment to express to you how I feel about it. I want to again say that I'm proud to be here with you and to join with you in your sentiments. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hi there, I'm Candy Bergen, whatever that means. I don't have anything to add to what will be said tonight. I'm here because they asked me, and I'm here because we're all friends, right? And because we all believe in peace, not promises of peace, and because we hope that our presence here tonight will bring some sort of sign of sanity in the middle of all this madness. Bye.
Lewis McCam, and I guess I'm sort of the representative of UCLA here this evening, at least of UCLA's anti-war movement. One of the major concepts of the moratorium across the country is that this is a time to stop and think about the issues, and especially the issue of the war. The war is not the only issue facing us. I think with most of the rest of the rally, we'll get a good concept of precisely how our strength is growing, and we'll all get to feel real good about where we stand and about how we're progressing. But I think that there's some issues that we've got to consider. And so rather than pep you up, I want to make you think for a while about some of the problems that we face and about where we should go from here. The first is the problem of Vietnam. And the first problem there is, what demand should we win the people to? There's a lot of question now going around in political circles as to whether or not our demand should be that all U.S. troops be out of Vietnam by election time in 1970, or that we should set some other similar deadline. I would say that this should not be our demand, that our demand should be for an immediate and total withdrawal of all U.S. troops. We run into some of the arguments that people give for continuing the phased type of withdrawal. One of these is that there are national interests at stake somehow in Vietnam, and that therefore we cannot immediately pull out. I would ask these people, whose interests are you talking about when you say the national interest? Are you talking about the interests of a black tenant farmer in Mississippi, of a Chicano farm laborer in the San Joaquin Valley, or of a draft-age student, or of a draft resistor in prison? Or precisely whose interests are you talking about? There are other people who say that we have to de-Americanize the war, that it will be okay when just the American troops are out and we can continue to send guns, arms to General Key and his crew in Vietnam. I would ask these people, are you also willing to send guns and arms to the blacks fighting for liberation in Rhodesia? And if not, why not? I think we have another issue to face on Vietnam. And this is the problem of how we shall expand our movement from the point we are at now. Let's take the issues. Last summer, there was confrontation upon this campus when students from the coalition went and tried to stop a class on the guidance of tactical missiles being offered by the university here. I think the crucial problem which you people out there face is how you are going to explain these sorts of actions to the people who are still not in the anti-war movement. Say the guy who's down there in Torrance working in a factory 40 hours a week for $1.75 an hour, when it's his kid that's over there in Vietnam and not the kids of the, who are going here to the university. Because the issue in his mind is going to be immediately when he sees on George Putnam or Tom Redden, those people stopping that class, that it's his kid over there in Vietnam. And it might damn well better take place, because the accuracy of the guidance of the missiles might save his kid over there in Vietnam someday if he gets surrounded by the NLF. This is the issue in his mind. How are you going to get through to that man? I think you've got to get in there and you have to talk about some of the advantages to him of losing that war in Vietnam, of getting out of there. Say this man works in a factory assembling radios. Say he works for $1.75 an hour. Say he has a hard time feeding his children on that wage. He wants a better wage and he's going to go on strike. What is that company going to tell him? It's going to tell him it doesn't take a hell of a lot of intelligence to assemble radios. If you guys are going to go on strike, if you're going to raise our costs, we're just going to move this factory over to Japan or to Thailand or to South Vietnam where we can get people to work for 35 cents an hour. But if we lose that war in Vietnam, if the people in Vietnam gain control over their own lives, those people might no longer be available for such exploitation, and it might actually be to the benefit of that worker down there in Torrance. I think another issue which we've got to face is this issue of racism. And I think we have to get away from the platitudes on that issue. How are we really going to solve the problem of racism? Where does the problem lie? There were 500,000 votes for George Wallace here in the state of California. Where did they come from? If you look at the geographical distribution of those votes, you'll find that they were largely from white working class districts. How are you going to get through to those people? Take a problem like the problem of Pittsburgh last month. Remember, the black workers forced the shutdown of the construction industry and a demand for more construction jobs for black workers. And within 3 days, you had the white construction workers banding together, marching on City Hall, demanding that the construction industry be reopened. What is the solution to that problem? I think the solution to that problem is interrelated with some other problems which we have. Take a look at the infant mortality rate in the United States. We're the richest nation in the world. In the year 1966, the infant mortality rate among whites in the United States, that excludes blacks, Puerto Ricans, Indians, etc., was 20.6 per thousand. The infant mortality rate in Sweden, a poorer nation per capita, was 12.6 per thousand. Virtually half of what the white infant mortality rate was in the United States. What does that translate into in real terms when people are talking about violence and death on the streets? What that translates into is 24,000 needless white infant deaths per year. And if you add into that the figure for non-whites, needless to say, their infant mortality rate is about twice that of whites. It's 16,000 of them. And per decade, that translates into 400,000 needless infant deaths because of the crappy medical system we have in this country. Now we get back to this issue of racism and how it ties into this issue of infant mortality. We've got these unemployed black workers out there. We can't find jobs for them. We can see that we need hospitals. Why not train them and put them to work building hospitals? We have other problems too. There's a lot of talk about Nixon slowing down the pace of desegregation of the South. I think we've got to take a hard, critical look about why that problem is still around after 8 years when the other party was in power and could and should have solved it and had the power to do so. Take a look at the latest figures that were just released in the 1969 statistical abstract issued by the U.S. government. As of the fall of 1968, the percentage of black elementary and secondary school students in the state of Alabama attending integrated schools was 7.4%. In the state of Mississippi, it was 7.1%. The amount of progress made in the last year in Alabama, they made a great increase from 5.4% to 7.4%. At that rate, it will only take 2 more generations. That's at the latest pace. That's not at the average pace that we followed all along. That's at the pace we're following now. And that was not the pace which the Republicans were handing down. So the question, I think, really gets to be that we've got to take a strong look at who we put in power, and we have to be damn sure that they're dedicated when they get in there, and that they're not going to shuck and jive when they get in there. We have to take a look at problems like San Francisco State, too. Remember, we had a big rebellion there last fall. There was one thing that I didn't hear stated much over the mass media about San Francisco State. That was the effect which the master plan for higher education, which was not passed under the Republicans, had upon that college. The black percentage enrollment at San Francisco State College in 1959 was 11%. The percentage of black enrollment as of last fall was 4%. The blacks under that master plan for higher education were being forced out of San Francisco State, and they decided, well, San Francisco State's a little bit overfull, so we're not going to accept any JC transfers or JC graduates into San Francisco State. And you black people who can't make it in on the first shot anymore, if you go through the JC and try to get in there, you're just going to have to go elsewhere. I think we're going to have to look hard at the issue of whether black capitalism is or can solve that problem. The last problem, it's a brief problem. It's one which many people are taking up now, is the ecological problem. I think we've got to look beyond smog. We have to consider other problems too. How much oil is there left on this planet? 1 century's worth, possibly 2 centuries worth. We may find alternative energy sources when that oil is gone. But will we find alternative sources to use as a base for making certain types of plastics? I don't know. The final question then is, who is going to lead the change that we need in this country? I don't know who we can rely upon but ourselves. I think the people must continue to take the leadership, and we must examine all the solutions which different groups propose. Thank you.
Hello, I'm a student at UCLA also. I'm teaching French here, and let me introduce myself. I am Monique Truong. I'm the daughter of Truong Dinh Du, the peace candidate in the last Vietnamese election. He committed the crime of advocating peace, and he has been jailed ever since the election, and he's still in prison. I'm here today to introduce you the point of view of Vietnamese citizens and to tell you that, like all of you, we want peace. We all desire peace. And we all desire an end to this senseless war that has killed so many of your people and of my people. These are our desires. But now we must ask ourselves how we are going to fulfill them. I submit that the first step toward fulfilling this desire is to get rid of the present dictatorship that we have in Saigon. You have been repeatedly told that the purpose for keeping 500,000 American soldiers over there is to protect the South Vietnamese people and our government from the communist aggression. Well, let me tell you, this is a fallacy. It's a complete illusion. This noble purpose is only to keep a corrupt government in power. A corrupt government whose existence depends on the war. And whose trademark is oppression, oppression at home and lie to you outside. Believe me, the Thieu government is not a puppet of the American people, as the communists used to say. The Thieu government is manipulating you, is manipulating the American government. He's telling you that you are fighting for democratic government, while at the same time his repressive tactics deprive the South Vietnamese people of the very basic rights of democracy. The best example of this repression that I can give you is my father's example. He's now in jail and he just suffered a heart attack, and I don't know how long he will stay in there. This is Thieu's reward for those who speak out for peace in South Vietnam. This is a kind of man that your government is supporting and that your government glorifies. This is the reason why peace cannot come about as long as Thieu is in power. This is why I say to you Americans, get rid of that corrupt government. Withdraw your support of that government that is only dedicated to making war. Stop being manipulated and stop making Thieu another Batista. We, the generation of today, from America and from South Vietnam, we demand a change of policy which says, it's bad now, it's really bad, but let's not change it, because at least we know how it's like. We desire a new and honest policy, a policy devoted to peace, a policy that will stop the war and the bloodshed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't mean thank me. I think it's now time that we heard from somebody that is an elected representative of the United States government. One that tonight seems to have gone in hiding. In the press this morning across the country, they capsuled the progress of the moratorium and what had happened in different cities throughout the country, and they pointed out there have been no bad things happening, just good things, other than 4 young people stormed the White House. Actually, one of the 4 young people was the vice president. He was trying to answer the phone. That's not a serious way to get into the introduction that I have. I can only say that when you look at the national leadership in America, it's difficult sometimes to find in your heart and in your mind a respect for the leaders that seem not to reflect the attitudes and the feelings of these people, of our people. This man does, and he comes here as a man with great dignity and great intellect and great mind and presence. Would you please welcome Congressman George Brown.
I didn't hear what he said about me, but it must have been good, or you wouldn't all be clapping. I like to come out here to UCLA. It still frightens me a little bit. You know, when I went here 30 years ago, it was a much smaller school. And all these people, I'm just not used to it. This has been a very exciting day for all of us. It started out for me this morning over at Whittier, and this really took a lot out of me. Going over to Whittier College, because I knew that the eyes of that man up there was going to be on me. And sure enough, there was a lot of photographers and all that sort of stuff around there, and I could just see them all getting these pictures of me and all these dissident elements conducting this demonstration in an effort to aid Hanoi. And the word getting back to Richard Milhouse back there in Washington, you know, he's going to find out I'm against the war in Vietnam. just like President Johnson felt that I found out that I was against the war in Vietnam. I'm very nonpartisan on this. Very conservative also. Very conservative indeed. I hate to be called an ultra-liberal just because I've been trying to save this country money. You know, like a couple of $100 billion that we've been wasting over there. But I think it takes a lot of courage for all of you to be out here this evening. And I want to applaud you for it. After all, the governor has said he doesn't feel that this is the right thing to be doing, and I'm sure Rafferty doesn't feel it's the right thing to be doing. And frankly, you've got enough troubles with the governor right now without provoking him. You know, I found out what the trouble was with Reagan the other day. I mean, as far as Reagan and the university is concerned. He found out that you've got a college of liberal arts. And you know the formula that they use. It hits me in every campaign. Liberalism equals socialism equals communism. So he figures you're teaching communism out here. You're not. Well, anyway, what Reagan told me is that he's going to insist that you set up a college of conservative arts also. And I've had to say a lot of words in support of people like Nixon and Reagan and Rafferty and even Sam Yorty today. Because, you know, I've been reading the polls in all the national magazines, and the polls show that something like 60% of the American people think we ought to get out of Vietnam right away, which is true. It's probably closer to 80%. About the same number think that it was a mistake to have ever gotten involved there. And that's true, we never should have. And I've been having to defend these people like Nixon and Reagan and Yorty and Murphy, my good friend, the senior senator from California. I've been having to defend them because, after all, they are a minority. And we don't want to oppress these minorities. We want to treat them fairly and give them the opportunity to say their piece. No, I think that we've learned that. We have got to be good to minorities in this country. So I've been urging that we listen to them, and after we have listened to them, that we tell them to get the hell out there and get us out of Vietnam. Now, I really don't have much of a message for you this evening. I'm sure you've had some much more able speakers. And I just wanted to say a word or two about some of the things I've been reading and listening to today. There are all sorts of nuts who are saying that those 60 or 70% of the American people who think it's a mistake to be in Vietnam and want to get out are advocating things like treason, that this is the bug-out system, you know, and that it's letting down our boys over there. And this kind of riles me a little bit. I really get upset about it. Because it's these guys who have been saying you keep pouring troops in, keep dropping more bombs that have caused all of the death and destruction of American soldiers, as well as the Vietnamese. And you know, it was this country who established a principle about 25 years ago known as the Nuremberg Principle. that if your government is doing something bad, it ought to stop. And I have contended ever since this war began that this was a war which did not have the sanction of the American people. It did not have the sanction of the American Congress. It was a war which was illegal by any standard which can be measured. It was a war which was immoral by all the standards of mankind. And even more practical, it was a war which was completely unwinnable and contrary to the interests of the American nation. And when you are confronted with that kind of a situation, the response is not to say we have to keep on doing what we've been doing. The answer is get the hell out of that kind of a situation. So this is the course which I'm sure the large majority of this group would support here this evening, and hence it's a little bit redundant for me to keep saying it. But there is a great deal more that has to be done before we can be certain that the voice of the American people is translated into action by the bureaucracy of the federal government. There has to be a test of power. This is what it boils down to. I am convinced that Lyndon B. Johnson would never have changed the course which he had set in Vietnam and withdrawn from the presidency, the race for the presidency, if he had not faced the brutally realistic fact that the forces which opposed him were more powerful than the forces which supported him. I am convinced that the same thing is true of Richard Milhous Nixon. The people who head the great power structures of this country and of the world today only respond to power. They don't respond to sweet reason. They don't respond to teach-ins. They don't respond to moratorium days. They respond to power. I hope that that will be peaceful power, but it has to be power translated into meaningful terms that any politician can understand. And I suggest that the only way that we will reap the full benefits from this moratorium day is by renewing our dedication to going out and working in every possible way to eliminate from power those politicians who have led us into this morass and who refuse to lead us out. That is the only course of action which will produce results. So let us renew our dedication to that, and I thank you for listening to me.
There's Phil Ochs, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi there. The thing that you have to avoid, of course, is not to let rallies of this size just become liberal fronts. They've got to have a bigger sense of life than that. Oh, I am just a student, sir, and only want to learn. But it's hard to read through the rising smoke from the books that you like to burn. So I'd like to make a promise, and I'd like to make a vow that when I've got something to say, sir, I'm gonna say it now. You've given me a number and you've taken off my name. To get around this campus, why, you almost need a plane. And you're supporting Chiang Kai-shek while I'm supporting Mao. So when I've got something to say, sir, I'm gonna say it now. Oh, you'd like to be my father, you'd like to be my dad, and give me kisses when I'm good and spank me when I'm bad. But since I left my parents, I've forgotten how to bow. So when I've got something to say, sir, I'm gonna say it now. And things, they might be different if I was here alone, but I've got a friend or two who no longer live at home, and we'll respect our elders just as long as they allow that. When I've got something to say, sir, I'm gonna say it now. I've read of other countries where the students take a stand. They've even helped to overthrow the leaders of the land. Now I wouldn't go so far to say we're also learning how, but when I've got something to say, sir, I'm gonna say it now. So keep right on a-talking and tell us what to do. But if nobody listens, my apologies to you. And I know that you were younger once, 'cause you sure are older now. And when I've got something to say, sir, I'm gonna say it now. So I am just a student, sir, and only want to learn. But it's hard to read through the rising smoke from the books that you like to burn. So I'd like to make a promise, and I'd like to make a vow, that when I've got something to say, sir, I'm gonna say it now. The trouble with liberal rallies is that everybody minces words, the words that never get in the media. And I'd like to say what I think is the truth. I think the truth is that this country is in the hands of criminals, that Nixon is a criminal. Reagan and Murphy and Nixon and Agnew are worried that we are betraying our boys in Vietnam. I'd like to say that I believe there are traitors in this country. The traitors are Richard Nixon, Spiro Agnew, Ronald Reagan, and George Murphy. The word is traitor, one who betrays his country for whatever interest, self-interest, money. Here's a song written in the early days of the betrayal. To the Battle of New Orleans at the end of the early British War. The young land started growing, young blood started flowing, but I ain't marching anymore. For I killed my share of Injuns in 1,000 different fights. I was there at the Little Big Horn. I heard many men lying, I saw many more dying, but I ain't marching anymore. It's always the old to lead us to the wars. It's always the young to fall. Now look at all we've won with the saber and the gun. Tell me, is it worth it all? For I stole California from the Mexican land, fought in the bloody Civil War. Yes, I even killed my brothers, so many others, but I ain't marching anymore. For I marched to the battles of the German trench in a war that was bound to end all wars. Oh, I must have killed 1,000,000 men. Now they want me back again, but I ain't marching anymore. It's always the old to lead us to the wars. It's always the young to fall. Now look at all we've won with the saber and the gun. Tell me, is it worth it all? For I flew the final mission in the Japanese skies, set off the mighty mushroom roar. When I saw the cities burning, I knew that I was learning that I ain't marching anymore. Now the labor leaders screaming when they close a missile plant. United Fruit screams at the Cuban shore. Call it peace or call it treason, call it love or call it reason, but I ain't marching anymore. No, I ain't marching anymore.
No, don't get me wrong. I don't mean to show any disrespect. Just a little disgust. See, my feeling is that at this point we are in a state of anarchy because there is no president. There is no president because there was no election. An election is a choice between opposites. And what happened here was. If you remember beyond the media nightmare, there was, in fact, some primaries with Robert Kennedy, with Eugene McCarthy, where a lot of people voted in Indiana and very conservative states, where 80%, 90% of the people came out against the war. Now, that was overlooked in Chicago and Miami, and by the power brokers of this country who are controlling this country. So there was, in fact, no election. There were just three right-wing assholes, Humphrey, Nixon, and Wallace. Parading their prostituted souls on the media, which gave them equal time, you know, and it was a bad dream. And Nixon is a very ambitious man. He's a very jealous man, a very insecure man. He probably will crack up an office after a few things like this. And he picked Agnew. The real reason he picked Agnew was not because of the South or anything. The real reason he picked him was when you find a man as artificial as that, a man with as little magnetism as that, with as little leadership as that, who buys the presidency, he's got to find somebody who's got less magnetism, less intelligence, which is a hard thing to do, to find somebody less than Richard Nixon, but he did it. He found Spiro Agnew. Let's give credit where credit's due. It was a used car dealer's election, and the choice was rather small. The boys agreed it's the war we need, now there's no president at all. So here's to Nixon and Agnew, they are the stars of the stage and screen. It's not since Laurel and Hardy have I laughed so hard I've screamed. I thought that Johnson was the devil, I thought we couldn't do no worse. Now the White House stands in Disneyland, this country must be under a curse. So here's to Nixon and Agnew, they are the stars of the stage and screen. It's not since Laurel and Hardy have I laughed so hard I've screamed. We've murdered 1 million people, we've poisoned the sea and the sky. Now the jails are packed with the young and the black for the crime of being high. So here's to Nixon and Agnew, they are the stars of the stage and screen. It's not since Laurel and Hardy
have I laughed so hard I've screamed. I dreamed Nixon died of a suntan. There was only Spiro left. At his swearing in, he fell on his chin. He assassinated himself. So here's to Nixon and Agnew. They are the stars of the stage and screen. It's not since Laurel and Hardy have I laughed so hard I've screamed. Get rid of this stinking government. Get rid of this stinking government.
The program was so intended for this moratorium rally that turn off the lights, huh? I won't be able to see my notes. And I won't know when to introduce Phil Ochs again. So we have to keep the lights on. Some of you are getting a tan down there, and it's good. This program was so intended that it reflect the will of the people of this country, that there be some questioning, and that there is dissent. There is a protest, the operation of this war. The administration granted the right to use this property if this program was so open to questioning and dissent in opposition to our protest. I will introduce to you now for a few moments. By the way, there are 20,000 people here tonight. 20,000. I bet they're all gathered in the war room tonight with the big chalkboard. This will be the first place to go, I think, you know. If the ABM ever go, they want to test it, LA will be the place probably. This gentleman is from the Young American Federation, and he would like to, his name is Rod Van Orden, and he will speak to you for a few moments.
Well, first of all, I'd like to make just one minor correction. That's the Young Americans for Freedom. Don't worry, baby, I'm for peace too. That's why I'm here tonight. That's why we're all here. There's something I want to say. We could have been out of Vietnam a long time ago if we had gotten rid of the draft. Young men would not, so many young men would not be in Vietnam. If we had a volunteer army, 4 or 5 years ago. The bill was presented in the Senate. There's a bill on the Senate now, and it can be voted in if the bureaucrats let it in. It could prevent future Vietnams or U.S. involvements in future Vietnams. If you don't believe in the war, simply don't volunteer. That's what we contend with the voluntary army. A society founded on volunteerism, not coercion. Now, there's something I'd like to say about the way we got involved in Vietnam. I don't think it was right at all to send in all that military. There was a much better way to do it. It was through revolution. I contend, and many members of Young Americans for Freedom contend, that we can have a pro-free market economy revolution in North Vietnam and all of Asia. This is the way to do it. Revolution in all of Asia and keep the troops out of Asia. We can train revolutionaries, the people themselves,
to liberate themselves rather than to have our own troops go in. Now, I'd just like to clear up something. We've been talking about peaceful coexistence. I picked up the paper tonight, and really, it's kind of shocking because some of you can see that.
What paper is that? That's their own.
Freedom of the press. Anyway, the headline read, no, you'll find it in other papers too. Russia has exploded the largest atomic bomb ever on this planet, and an underground explosion. Now there's something, yeah, okay, this is peaceful coexistence. Well, I'll tell you, I think if there's any reason at all that U.S. troops should have been involved in Vietnam, it was because of the Mekong Delta rice bowl there. Many people fear that, thanks, I needed that. Many people fear that once Vietnam goes communist or whatever, once the Mekong Delta and the rice bowl of Asia is taken over, that the Red Chinese will use this rice to feed their starving, and then they will devote other funds to war-related research. They will devote these funds that they're fighting starvation with to war-related research. They'll use the rice to feed their hungry, and baby, that war-related research could put an atomic bomb right here on UCLA. Rice was the reason that we were in Vietnam. That was the reason. This stuff. However, okay, I just like to say this. It's the rice. Just keep that in mind. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thumbs up.
Now you know why it's Hollywood, huh? Live from Hollywood, CBS. You just got it. There you go. Okay. There have been a few speakers on the program that, and in the country, that their name is an introduction. Their name is a style of life and an attitude and an example. The next speaker is one of them, one of those men. Harry Belafonte, ladies and gentlemen.
I've come here tonight for many reasons. First is because on the day picked to hold this moratorium, this is where I happen to be. And I guess in a way, if I had a choice, being out here on Yorty's plantation is where I should be. It is the people in the city of Los Angeles that gave us Masa Yorty. It is the people in the state of California that gave us Masa Reagan. And California was one of the decisive states that gave us Masa Nixon. So it is poetic that I'm here tonight in one of the great states of repression, dehumanization, and racism. So you just give me a few short minutes of your time, and I'd like to explain why I'm here with you tonight. First and foremost is a chance to tell each and every one of you gathered here that I love you. And I thank you. And then to let you know that I'm here tonight because it wasn't so very long ago that one of the dearest men in my life stood on somewhat the same type of platform on this very campus and spoke out passionately and fervently on behalf of America and all humanity to end the war in Vietnam and American military ambitions all over the world. Martin Luther King is dead now. So in a way, I've come here tonight to thank you for not having let him die in vain. But I've also come here tonight because I'm an artist. And as long as there's a breath left in my body, I shall always sing the songs of the people. But I must admit that I'm tired of singing anti-war songs. And I've come here tonight also because I'm a father. And I don't want to see my son, my beautiful son, with his face stilled in death, lying down in some rice paddy in some far-off land, defending the ambitions of greed, racism, and dehumanization. And I don't want him when he grows up to think of his father as a coward because I wasn't here tonight. Because I may have run scared when the vulgarians and the pigs call me a commie and a commie sympathizer. And with the looks of some of the men who keep making that reference, I don't know if that's so bad. I'm here tonight because I don't want my 3 daughters, when they bring children into the world, to feed my grandchildren with milk that flows from breasts polluted with strontium 90 and DDT. I'm here tonight because I'm a black man, and black people have paid the greatest penalty for our military adventures. I'm here tonight because my mother was a domestic worker, and poor people have gained nothing from this program of dehumanization. I'm here tonight because I dearly love the human race. I'm here tonight because the youth of our nation is our only hope to the survival of the human race. I'm here tonight because I want Martha Nixon and Martha Reagan and Martha Yorty to know that I too am an American. I'm also here tonight because I want you to know, each and every one of you, that I love you, and that in you I find warmth, I find compassion, and I find a chance for my children. Thank you.
You're hearing the voice and the words of very special people tonight from Los Angeles. Our next friend is also very special. Stanley Myron Handelman.
Thanks a lot, I just wanted to say that I'm not really recently involved in this. Can you hear me back there? No? Okay. I'm not recently involved in this thing. I've been against the war in Vietnam when the Japanese were in there. I was against it when the French were in there. There's been a lot of talk against our president. And I'd just like to say that maybe he is screwing up. But when he ran for election, he said one thing. He said that he had a secret that he didn't want to disclose because he didn't want to mess up what Johnson was doing. But when he got in, see, then it would be okay. I just want to say that no matter what you say about Nixon, there is no man that I've ever seen that could keep a secret as good as this man. Johnson stepped out of office because of the tremendous resentment to our involvement in Vietnam. All of the candidates that were running against him on peace platforms polled all sorts of tremendous votes. And it was the anti-war sentiment that got Johnson out. Now Nixon said that no matter what the people want, no matter what they demonstrate for, he'll do what he thinks is right. We're fighting in Vietnam to spread democracy. I hope that they don't end up with this sort of democracy. Thank you very much.
A co-chairman of the National Mobilization to End the War in Vietnam, Professor Donald Kalish.
I'm really palpitating with joy. It's just beautiful to see all these people. Let me say that it took us, those of us who've been opposing the war in Vietnam, 3 or 4 years to bring the majority of the American people to understand the illegality, the immorality, and decency of that war. Now, the question I want to pose is it going to take us that long to end that war? And the answer should be absolutely not. We now have the majority, and we simply have to continue to express our dissatisfaction with that war in the manner that we saw today. I'm sure many of you have heard radio programs to indicate that throughout the world, American students were demonstrating in every country. In every campus, students have demonstrated, and here, it's the largest demonstration I've seen at UCLA in the 20 years I've been here. But this demonstration won't stop the war in itself. We all know that. But demonstrations, street politics will stop the war. Or topple the government. One of the two has to happen. Each of us must continue in his own way every day to express his opposition to the war in Vietnam. I want to announce what is the next major peace action. The moratorium will go to its 2-day phase on the 13th and 14th of November. During those days, no one should do anything except express anti-war sentiment. On the 15th of November, in Washington, D.C. and in San Francisco, we plan to have genuinely massive demonstrations. In Washington, D.C., we want to have no less than 500,000 people, and in San Francisco, no less than 250,000 people. Those figures were projected before today. I think today indicates we can double that. 1 million of us should demonstrate in front of the President in Washington, and 500,000 of us should be in the polo grounds, which we've already reserved in San Francisco. We will march through various streets, coming together on Gary Street and march into the Golden Gate Park. There we will have a program, and the program will be essentially a cultural expression of our political positions. We will have a minimum of speakers. I think all of us have heard enough speakers, and recognizing that I won't speak too long myself. In Los Angeles, as a step toward building to the November 15th demonstration in San Francisco, there will be a march of teachers, high school teachers, grammar school teachers, and university teachers. You will see notices, watch for it. This will be a march of just the academic profession to indicate its solidarity and its opposition to the war. Let me emphasize that we can stop the war in Vietnam, that is, bring these troops home, our soldiers, immediately allow the Vietnamese the self-determination to solve their own problems, if today is simply the beginning of a continuous mass action of people expressing their opinion. I want to say one other thing. All of us know that if the troops come home from Vietnam, American foreign policy need not change. The work will not be done then. The problems at home will still remain. I want each of us to dedicate a small portion of each day of the rest of his life to making this country the country it ought to be, a place where we can live and respect our own land.
The speakers have, it seems, credentials before or after their names. Our next guest is, like many people here, he represents the students of this country. Would you welcome James Roberson, please, a student at UCLA.
I think it's fortunate that a student who brings no credentials is allowed to speak tonight. I'm nobody. But I am somebody. I'm a man. I'm a black man. What I want to talk to you briefly about is the fact that in America today, black people have played an important part, unfortunately, in the Vietnam War. And the administration has had the audacity to ask me to also participate in that war. And I think that this is something that I should let the world know, that after living for a quarter of a century in America, being affected by American racism and oppression, I got a letter the other day talking about greetings. That's right. Tricky No Dick Nixon had the audacity to ask me to fight in their war. And I was just thinking about what I was going to say to him. Well, I won't say that, what I'm going to say to him, but it's going to be something that I think is going to be unpleasant. And I think that I want to urge all my black brothers and sisters to join in with our white brothers and sisters and to tell the Nixon administration that we will not participate in their little folly. We'll have to say in crystal clear terms that it has to come to an end. And when all the people decide that this war will no longer be fought, then I think that we will demonstrate clearly to the Nixon administration that this action and this activity is unacceptable. Thank you very much.
Phil Ochs. Hey, Phil. That applause was for you.
I mean, I can sing a page down. That's the best I can do. I mean, for that.
Oh, look outside the window, there's a woman being grabbed. They've dragged her to the bushes and now she's being stabbed. Maybe we should call the cops and try to stop the pain. But Monopoly is so much fun, I'd hate to blow the game. And I'm sure it wouldn't interest anybody outside of a small circle of friends. Riding down the highway, yes, my back is getting stiff. 13 cars have piled up, they're hanging on a cliff. Maybe we should pull them back with our towing chain. But we gotta move and we might get sued, and it looks like it's gonna rain. And I'm sure it wouldn't interest anybody outside of a small circle of friends. Sweating in the ghetto with the panthers and the poor. The rats have joined the babies who are sleeping on the floor. Now wouldn't it be a riot if they really blew their tops? But they got too much already, and besides we've got the cops. And I'm sure it wouldn't interest anybody outside of a small circle of friends. There's a dirty paper using sex to make her sales. The Supreme Court was so upset they sent him off to jail. Maybe we should take a stand and send the fiend to fine. But we're busy reading Playboy and the Sunday New York Times. And I'm sure it wouldn't interest anybody outside of a small circle of friends. Smoking marijuana is more fun than drinking beer. Yeah! But a friend of ours was captured and they gave him 30 years. Maybe we should raise our voices, ask somebody why. But demonstrations are a drag, besides we're much too high. And I'm sure it wouldn't interest anybody outside of a small circle of friends. Oh, look outside the window, there's a woman being grabbed. They've dragged her to the bushes and now she's being stabbed. Maybe we should call the cops and try to stop the pain. But Monopoly is so much fun, I'd hate to blow the game. And I'm sure it wouldn't interest anybody outside of a small circle of friends.
Let's just say now it's time for lighting the candles.
Where's George Brown? Congressman Brown? He is. He's not leaving. Come on up there. Phil, stay here. What we're going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is we'd like to have you all stand, please, if you can. Be very careful of your neighbor, because this is a peaceful demonstration. Because there are some 20,000 people here, it will be extremely difficult and uncomfortable to move from the place that we're in. We may be here till the war ends. So, take a look around you. Maybe your family. Okay, Phil, is Congressman Brown here? You're going to do blowing in the wind? What? If you'd like to now to try and light your candles and join this young lady, please, in song, and just Go right in. Tell her you're going to do Blowing in the Wind. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, the lights will go...
Rip out the wires.
Now wait. It looks very beautiful. If you'll hold on just a second. Where's Congressman Brown? Get George Brown.
Come on, CBS,
Go ahead, start singing. Sing it loud as you can. Don't worry about the key. You want to jump down, friend? Oh, you want to get that shot? Go ahead. Where's Ochs? Yeah, you want to jump down, friend? Start.
How many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man? How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? How many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many seas must a white dove sail before it is washed to the sea? How many roads must a man walk down before he's allowed to be free? How many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times can a man look up before he can see the sky? How many years must one man have before he can hear people cry? How many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Get together. Children of darkness.
Okay, get together.
Okay. Everybody sing this with me because you all know it. It's Get Together and it means a lot, okay? Love is but a song we sing, fears that we will die. You can make the mountains ring, or make the angels cry. on, people now. Smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Come on and love one another right now. Some may come and some may go. We will surely pass. When the one that left us here returns for us at last, we are but a moment's sunlight fading in the grass. So come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Come on and love one another right now. If you hear this song I sing, you will understand. You hold the key to love and hate, all in your trembling hand. Just one key unlocks them both. It's there at your command. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. Right now, right now.
We shall overcome. Start right now. We shall overcome. Go ahead.
Everybody, we shall overcome.
Go ahead.
I don't know what to sing with me.
Oh,
Where about the flowers gone? Where have all the flowers gone? No, where have all the flowers gone?
Oh, that one. We shall overcome. They were going on.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand today. Oh, we are not afraid. What's another verse? We are not afraid. We shall be free. Black and white. I do believe we shall overcome someday.
We are not afraid.
We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh,
someday. Black and white together.
Black and white together. Black and white together. Black and white together today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
We shall have peace.
We shall have peace. We shall have peace. We shall have peace today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall have peace today.
We shall overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart.
Ladies and gentlemen, good night. Be very careful leaving the rally.